يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري قرآن املأ قلبي قرآن
I said even when I was in administrative positions, I had continued with clinical practice. So our clinical practice those days, we practiced medicine with passion. I remember from our housemanship days, like I said, I did my housemanship with other colleagues that we graduated together with in Bauchi. It was like a dream come true. As a medical student, of course, you were not allowed to practice, so to say. You could not legally prescribe, you could not legally attend to patients. So the day I started housemanship, I was so eager, to start this practice, this thing that you have been taught and you have attended numerous ward rounds with your teachers, Here you are now with the responsibility to start legally applying your knowledge and little skill, if one will call it that, there. In Bauchi, I will remember several memorable things there. One was during Ramadan, when I was on call, as fast on call. I was on call in the Department of Pediatrics, and they called me around 8 in the morning. That time, Bauchi had intercom linking the wards. So I will do this before I finish attending to a patient in this ward. There will be a call from another ward that if Dr. On call finishes, we want him. I continued doing that until it was around 8 in the evening. So here was I, shuttling between wards, attending to patients, and even after the Ramadan fast was broken, I was still shuttling. And I passed through the casualty. That is where calls are directed. When a ward wants the doctor on call, they will send information to the casualty so that a call will be written. So I called out there and wrote a note to my second on call that I have been in the hospital for 12 hours continuous. I have not prayed Zuhur, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, nor broken my fast. So I am so exhausted that when I go, they should direct the calls to the second on call. And that was what happened. When I went there, I broke my fast and then prayed all the prayers and went to bed until the Fajr of the following day before I woke up. So this was, of course, unusual. It was the first time I had such massive demand, but we have had in other departments similar pressure. But the interesting bit is that it was with pleasure that we did, because clinical practice is such that you do something which to you may not be a big deal, sparing a little of your time, but to the beneficiary of your service, that may make a lot of difference. And in a lot of the years of our practice, apart from the fulfillment of doing your job properly and then seeing the outcome, you see a critically ill patient, through your intervention and by Allah's providence, they recover and they thank you. So it is fulfilling. Like I always say, you may be on call if you say in ONG, they call you at 1 a.m. By the time you mobilize the theater team to do that cesarean section, it may be 5 o'clock before you finally finish, and then you go back. You may still be called, and you have to report to work in any case in the morning as usual. So for me, for a long time, my sleep pattern became distorted. For several years, I have lost, a standard pattern that, okay, at 10 o'clock you go to bed, you wake up, Fajr and so on. Because you will be interrupted severally, by the demand of the work. But it was still pleasing because the little you do makes a lot of difference to the person you are called to attend. In those days, again in Bauchi, we have had doctors from variety of countries. Some were Polish, some were from India, some Bangladesh, and what have you. We have learned a lot from them. I personally continue to appreciate them. And even our own indigenous senior colleagues, senior consultants. One is talking of people like Dr. Bello Katabum, blessed memory, may Allah forgive him. Dr. Andrew Masulai, that's in medicine. Dr. Garba Saidu is still in Bauchi. The late is classmate and colleague, late to Hakim Bauchi, Dr. Mahmoud. Late Dr. Dagawa, Dr. Manjak, who was a psychiatrist, and our father as well, Professor Abu Ibrahim, also the head of psychiatry department in Bauchi, and our immediate, our seniors, but below Dr. Dagauda and Mahmoud, like Dr. Magaji, Muhammad Azari, left Dr. Damina, Dr. Johnson Dilla, there was one Dr. Bala. They were classmates, those ones. And thereafter, close by to us, still our seniors, people like Dr. Magaji Achi, Dr. Muhammad Hussein, both from Bauchi State. And what was done that time was when you returned from service, they made you rotate through the departments so that you develop skill again, such that they can post you anywhere, and you are a grounded medical officer that will meet the general medical need of that society or community you are posted to. When we moved to Gombe, we together under the first Commissioner of Health, Dr. we tried to form the departments. Like I said, it was initially the Department of Hospital Services, which looked after the hospitals in the state, so that the human resource in the hospital, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, radiographers, and others, they were managed, so to say, in the Department of Hospital Services. But similarly, other issues, of managing the hospital was also the purview of the Department of Hospital Services. When I moved to the Primary Health Care Directorate, that opened a new avenue for me, because we now have the primary health care facilities of the state. Although they are based in the local governments, but the PHC department have a supervisory role to oversee their functioning in the local governments. Of course, moving to the permanent secretary level came with its own demands and challenges. This was our administration, but like I said, I continued to undertake my clinical medicine interests, which I find useful, coming later. There are several individual experiences that one was privileged, to have. I remember when I was in Bajoga, the skill we got from our teachers in Bauchi came to the test. There was an accident, a truck going for, to Galda Market, which is just beside Nafaka, had an accident, and one of them had an internal abdominal bleeding. We explored him, and we found that he had a mesenteric laceration. The mesentery, where the blood supply to the intestines were located, was torn, and it was clear that that segment, the terminal ileum, and the cecum and initial ascending colon were affected. So meanwhile, earlier on, I had known, or I had the skill of doing an end-to-end intestinal anastomosis, largely of small intestine, either due to typhoid perforation or other, condition that leads to gangrene. Even strangulated hernias, if you have gangrene, you need to resect the unviable segment and anastomose the viable segment. So that time, here was I. There was no GSM. There was only landline, and it was even the weekend. So I couldn't call either Dr. Degauda or Dr. Mahmoud in Bauchi to say, here was the situation I was. So I had to innovate to say, well, let me transplant or interpose the terminal ileum. I created an opening on the side of the ascending colon and closed the lower part. My attempt was to create something like the cecum. So I did that and put a drain in the abdomen, and thank God it took. there was no leak, it was successful.
يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري قرآن املأ قلبي قرآن